All right, well, we're on holding by the Book of Leviticus Chapter 17. Again, one holding by the Book of Leviticus chapter 17. We are holding verse 7. That's where we've been the last few weeks. And we'll see if we finish it up today. The Torah says, Lo yizbachu oid es divcheim v'seirim asher heim zoyni machareim hukas olam diazois lahem nedoros. So the Torah says, we shall no longer slaughter and sacrifice the demons, right, after whom they went astray, right, certainly after them they went astray. They shall be an eternal decree to them for their generation. Now, we mentioned before that this is not, they're not sacrificing demons. Never had intention to sacrifice to demons. You know, again, even though that's what seemingly the Torah says, right? So commentators say not that way. Commentators explain not that way, mention a lot of reasons why. But we're in the Kli Yakar. I just wanted to finish this up. And the Kli Yakar says, he says pretty clear, as we mentioned last week, that this is not idolatry. Right? It looks like idolatry, but it's not idolatry. So explain the Ramban. We spoke about this, about what do you call it? Two lots. One fell Hashem, one fell Azazel, right? One to Hashem was going to be sacrificed, i.e. the Yom Kippur sacrifice. And the Azazel, the whole question what happens, right? Same way they sent this he-goat to the desert, and basically this he-goat dies. Now remember, it's not a sacrifice. The he-goat dies any number of ways, but it's not a sacrifice. Right? That's what the Ramban over there explains as well. And we mentioned also that demons themselves are called mazikim. They cause damage. They don't have the same power today as they used to. Right? No question. You know, as we spoke about before, we wouldn't even know if we saw a demon, right, today. So whatever, it's really relevant. You know, it's good to know they exist, or they existed. They had certain power. They cause damage. You know, more than that, what happens today, right? Pretty much irrelevant. They definitely don't have the same powers they had, that's for sure. Yeah, I want to mention one other thing. I didn't finish up this Kli Yakar. That the Kli Yakar here says, you could explain that we said before, a Kohen is only allowed to sacrifice only a sacrifice that a person is not allowed, Kohen is not allowed to sacrifice outside a certain area. Right? Not allowed to sacrifice. So here the Kli Yakar says, he says we can explain that when it says you're only allowed to a certain place. Right? He says that Rashi says, when you're talking about the blood, right? Rashi explains, right, when blood is spilled, right? That's what Rashi says, or he's going to say, right? He's going to say it before, right? And in verse 4, right? It says he's not brought into the tent of the entrance of the tent of meeting, bringing an offering to Hashem for the tabernacle of Hashem, right? It shall be considered as blood for that man. He has spilled blood, that man shall be cut off from his people. So Rashi says, what does it mean? He spilled blood. Meaning that a person who sprinkles blood of an offering outside the grounds of the Beis HaMikdash, right? It's forbidden. Right? Going to be forbidden. We're talking about someone who slaughters an animal and they spill the blood. But obviously that would be superfluous. We explained this before. That would be superfluous because we already spoke that. We already said that. Right? The sprinkling of the blood of the outside offering, right? The offering outside the grounds of the Beis HaMikdash is also forbidden. So, so Rashi explains, Rashi, Rashi, sorry about that. Rashi explains that if you spill blood, it also means, not exclusively, but it also means you sprinkle blood outside where you're not supposed to. And what's the punishment? Get spiritually cut off. All right, that's the punishment. Punishment is that they get spiritually cut off. Right, going does it, get spiritually cut off. Now, so explain. That's what Rashi says. So you can ask the question, right? It says the Kliyakar. You can ask the question. What are we talking about? What are we talking about over here? We're talking about if you spill blood, this sacrifice outside the Beis Hamikdash. You're not allowed to sacrifice, bottom line. You're not allowed to sacrifice outside the Beis Hamikdash. Yeah. So it says, Kliyakar, what's going on? What's going on over here that's talking before, it shall be considered as blood for that man. Right? Because Rashi there explains in verse 4, chapter 17, verse 4, it says one who shed the blood of a human being, and that is going to pay. It's going to pay with his life. Right now, that we said can't really take literally, because the blood of an animal slaughtered outside temple grounds is considered blood, right? Still considered blood. It means the blood of this animal is considered somewhat, again, not exactly, somewhat like the blood of this, somewhat like the blood of man. Why? Just as you're punished with death for killing a man, so too, a person is punished with kares, being spiritually cut off, premature death, or premature death of your children, for slaughtering this animal outside the courtyard, right? That's forbidden. So now it comes on the Kliyakar and says, Makesher. What's the connection? Right? What in the world is the connection between slaughtering an animal outside where it's not supposed to be slaughtered and spilling man's blood? Okay, Rashi explained it. We just read Rashi. Very good. Rashi explains it. But he says, what's the connection? What, in other words, usually when you look at the Torah, in general, the Torah itself, right? The Torah itself, we hold that verses close to one another. There's a reason. We call that in rabbinic literature, we call it smuchim. What does smuchim mean? Smuchim means I have one verse, and then I have the next verse, there's a connection, right? There will be a connection. I'll give an example. If you look at Parshas Vayakhel, right, the end of the book of Exodus. So the previous chapters all spoke about building the Mishkan, right? Building the tabernacle, the boards, the loops, the clasps, everything, right? The altars, the basin, right? The laver, all these things, the menorah, all these things that go into the building of the tabernacle. Very good. But the beginning over there, what does the Torah tell me? Right? The Torah tells me, let me just quote it. Some people say I never quote anything, so let's quote it. Beginning Parshas Vayakhel, chapter, I think 35. Yep, chapter 35. Says, again, Book of Exodus, chapter 35. Says, Moses assembled the entire assembly of the children of Israel. And he said to them, these are the things Hashem commanded to do them. And what did he command? Verse 2, Shabbos. On 6 days, work may be done. 7 days shall be holy for you. A day of complete rest for Hashem. Whoever does work on it shall be put to death. Verse 3, snuck into a fire. Any of your dwellings of the Sabbath day. Right? So then the Torah goes on, contributions for the tabernacle, construction of the tabernacle. The craftsmen selected, the man, all these things, with the curtains and the building, all the things. So what's the connection? What's the obvious question? The obvious question is, what's going on here? Why in the world? You tell me about Shabbos. Wasn't Shabbos already given as a command? Shabbos was already given as a command when? In the Book of Exodus chapter 19. Book of Exodus chapter 20. One of the 10 commandments, keep Shabbos. See, if you're telling me it's all about building the Mishkan, you got all these chapters now talking about the building of the Mishkan, the tabernacle, and everything goes into it. What's the connection to Shabbos? Rashi asks the question. Everybody asks the question. Because you don't just throw a verse in, the Torah is orderly. It doesn't mean everything happened exactly when the Torah says. Right? Because you see that when God gave the Torah, the sin of the golden calf happened shortly thereafter. Right? When does the sin of the golden calf spoken about? In Parshas Ki Tisa. In Parshas Ki Tisa, you got chapters, number of chapters, so it's not necessarily in chronological order of how the event happens. Right? Doesn't mean it's written in exactly that order. Okay. But even so, if you're going to tell me these chapters all about building the Mishkan, Ma Kesher Shabbos. What? The teacher would have been Hebrew here. Ma Kesher Shabbos. What's going on? What in the world's the connection? Seemingly, there's no connection. I already know it's forbidden. You know, that you have to keep Shabbos. I already know that. If I know I can't carry on Shabbos. I already know I can't cook on Shabbos. That I already know. That I know. Right? And I got a general command to keep Shabbos anyway. Right? Exodus chapter 20. The Makesher. What in the world? What's the connection to building the Mishkan? Comes on Rashi and other commentators and says, there's a juxtaposition of verses. Because there's a juxtaposition of verses, there must be a connection to Shabbos and the building the tabernacle. What's the connection? So Rashi says, what the connection is? Anything that was done in the tabernacle is forbidden to do on Shabbos. It does not supersede Shabbos. Meaning, anything that was done in the tabernacle, forbidden, Torah prohibition. Because it's learned out, juxtaposition of the verses, that doesn't supersede Shabbos. Now, the rabbis came along, and what did they do? They came along and said, anything similar to this, anything similar to what was done in the tabernacle, what was done in the Mishkan, going to be forbidden. How did they know? Why would they do such a thing? You tell me, the Torah prohibition is very good. Right? That I could hear. Right? That for sure I could hear. But if you're going to tell me in general, right, like, what's going on? So what the rabbis decide? They said, okay, anything done to the tabernacle will be a Torah prohibition. Anything similar will be forbidden. Why will it be forbidden? Right? What is the logic? Right? What is the logic? What is the logic to it? Right? The logic is, the rabbis came along and said, anything similar, you might forget the Shabbos. You might say, wow, it's only a Torah prohibition. Right? It's only things that were done in the Mishkan. What do I care? Something similar. Something similar you might forget. Right? Something similar you might forget. And you might come to a worse prohibition. Right? You totally might come to a worse prohibition. Right? So Rashi there says, anything done in the tabernacle, going to be forbidden. So, give another example. What's another example? The Torah says you got to honor your parents. You got to respect your parents. Right? Keep it all vain. Honoring your parents, one of the 10 commandments. Very good. In another place, it says Shabbos right after. It says you got to honor your parents. Then it says you got to keep Shabbos. Very good. What's the connection? What's the connection honoring your parents, keeping Shabbos? Rashi and others say, if your parents tell you that that's the great Shabbos, you don't listen to them. You don't listen to them. Anyone ever heard this? Right? That a parent says, you got to honor me. We're going on this trip. You have to come. Happens to be on Shabbos. You say, very nice. Has to be on Shabbos. Okay. Have a nice trip. We can't go. Why can't we go? Why is it forbidden? Because it's Shabbos. Oh, is it one of the 10 commandments? Got to honor your parents, right? We may have a discussion about that. Yeah. Is it one of the 10 commandments? Keep Shabbos? Does one supersede the other? So Rashi and other commentaries say no. Honoring your parents is a big thing if you can do it, if it's possible. Right? But if they tell you to desecrate Shabbos, you don't listen to them. There's a mitzvah not to listen to them. You can't disrespect them. Right? You can't make fun of them. You can't contradict them. Right? If they were to say, I think this, that, and the other thing. You can't just say you're wrong. That's showing disrespect. You can tell them, well, I think the Torah says like this. Right? Or I think the rabbis, they say like this. Whatever. So they'll understand themselves what they're saying is not correct. To blatantly say you're wrong is forbidden. Now, someone's going to say, what if the parents are evil? What if the parents have the status of being evil? Right? We'll deal with this for a second. What if the parents are evil? Yeah. So the difference of opinion between the Torah and the Rambam, Torah the son of the Rosh, and the Rambam, whether you have an obligation to honor them. Right? One holds that if they're evil, whole question what that means exactly. But if they're evil, maybe they don't have the status of a Jew anymore, I don't have to honor them. What does honor them mean? They walk in a room, I have to stand up for them. I can't sit in their place unless I have permission. Things like that. Now, honor is not the same thing as respect. Even if we say you have no obligation to honor them, it doesn't mean you can just contradict them. Doesn't mean you can embarrass them in public. Right? That's going to be forbidden. Right? So someone's going to say, but look who these people are. Look what they did. Okay. Maybe true. Who says you have to have such a connection to them? But, you have an obligation to protect yourself. True. 100% true. If a person getting physically attacked, you have a right to defend yourself, no question. Even psychologically, you have probably better not to have such a relationship. Okay. Right? But still, how far does it go? Can I embarrass them in public? Can I embarrass anyone in public? Regardless of what they do? Who says you're allowed to? People do it all the time, but who says you're allowed to? I'll tell you how far that goes. Yeah. So when a person gets embarrassed in public, what happens? The Gemara says they turn white, then they turn red. What does red represent? Blood. Right? So it's like you murdered them. Anyone's ever been embarrassed, they understand. Right? Probably like they feel like they've been murdered, feel like they want to crawl, they want to crawl under whatever rock, whatever rock it is, they want to crawl under, makes sense, right? Totally makes sense. So it's akin to murder, meaning it's similar to murder. Now, does that mean it's really murder? No, it doesn't mean it's really murder. If someone has been embarrassed in public, they'll know. They'll say, wow, it feels like murder, right? It feels like they've been totally demolished. Yeah, it does, right? And anyone who's gone through it, they know, right? For sure, they know. So, very interesting. Not everyone holds by murder itself, right? Let's make it easy. By murder itself. By murder itself, a person does not lose their portion of the world to come, right? Let's say, right? There are rabbinical authorities definitely hold, even if a person commits murder, you'll tell me it's one of the 7 Noahide laws, so a non-Jew is going to be liable for sure, right? Liable for death penalty. Okay. a Jew may not be liable for death penalty. Right? The Rambam, if I remember correctly, does not hold he gets the death penalty. Does not get the death. It's forbidden. There's no question. Doesn't necessarily mean he gets the death penalty. Okay, now comes along Rabbeinu Yonah. Comes along Rabbeinu Yonah of Garandi and Shari Tshuva. And Rabbeinu Yonah there says like this. Rabbeinu Yonah says it's not really murder. It's akin to murder. It's similar. It's like you murdered somebody. Now, did you take a knife and kill them? Literally? No. But it's like murder. Oh, so if you're going to tell me it's like murder. So comes along Rabbeinu Yonah and says it's similar enough to murder. You lose your portion of the world to come. You lose your portion of the world to come. What a absolute novelty. Because if anyone else would have said it, it'd be slaughter. What are you talking? I mean, no pun intended. Right? Why? Why? Because it's not murder. It doesn't matter you embarrass them in public. It's a terrible thing. Anyone's ever been embarrassed, everyone's ever embarrassed in public, they know. It's a terrible thing. Terrible thing to go through. Yeah? But it's not murder. It's similar to murder. So if there are commentaries out there that say, lose your portion of the world to come, if you murder someone literally, right, you murder them. Rabbeinu Yonah comes along and says, even if it's just similar, you lose your portion of the world to come. That's how severe it is. Right? That's how severe it is. Now, based on that, couldn't we say maybe there are things parents do that they disrespect us? They disrespect Torah? They blaspheme against Torah? Do I have a right to say whatever I want? No. This is what the Torah tells me. I'm not allowed to just say whatever I want. I'm not allowed to just answer them and say, hey, that's heresy. You're not allowed to say that. You can't tell them direct, even if they're evil. You got to say, well, I think the Torah says like this. And they can say, what do I care what the Torah says? I don't care about God. I don't believe in God. I think it's all made up. Right? So you're going to say, you're putting a stumbling block in front of them. Well, if you're not Jewish, not a problem. There's no such thing as putting a stumbling block in front of someone that applies to non-Jews. For Jews, you might say, but they might say that's something against Torah. Do I have to worry about it? They're going to say, someone will say the Torah's anti-pig. Yeah? Okay. In other cases, maybe they'll say the Torah's anti-non-Jew. Okay. Now, if you start answering that, they can say worse things. For sure, they can start saying worse things. Do I have to worry about it? Is that putting a stumbling block in front of somebody? No. Why not? Because it's not. Right? Whatever they're going to say, they're anti-Torah, it doesn't matter. Say, but you're adding fuel to the fire. Not adding any fuel to the fire. I'm sticking up for what the Torah says. They don't like it. Like my Rebbe would say, they could go eat kogel. They don't like it. Okay. So what if they don't like it? That's something I have to worry about. Because they may say things against Torah. Remember, I said this to a group of older women. Big mistake. Big mistake. Someone made a comment. I said, well, I think, I was trying to show respect. I said, I think that, the Torah, the Bible says like this. Or it says like that. So what's someone saying? Well, who says it's true? Who says what the Bible says is true? Now, I wasn't going to go in a whole discussion. Would have got me nowhere, just aggravated. Proving there is a God, reward and punishment, all this. They wouldn't have heard it. I mean, they never would have heard it. Okay. At the same time, even when you're arguing, you want to show respect. There's some level of respect. You're not going to yell and scream. But for a parent, it's different. Parent, there's greater obligation. Even if they're evil, even if they're terrible people. Right? I'm not allowed certainly to abuse them. I'm certainly not allowed to embarrass them. Even if they say something stupid or whatever, I'm not allowed to do that. I have to say that, I think the Torah says like this. Now, they come out and blaspheme against Torah, it's not my problem. They come saying, Torah's anti-pig, Torah's anti-this, it's all made up, blah, 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 blah. I'm not putting a stumbling block in front of them. Doesn't matter what they think. Maybe they'll say something, maybe they won't. Right? It's not like 100% of the time a person sticks up for Torah that's going to shred it. Maybe. I have to worry about that? I don't think I have to worry about that. Something, if I know 100% of the time, like in the laws of Shabbos, if I take a bench in a dirt path, right? I don't recommend doing this. Yeah, you take a bench on Shabbos on a dirt path and you drag it on the dirt path. What's gonna happen? 100% of the time, no matter what this bench looks like, that is going to make a groove in the dirt. 100% of the time. That's forbidden. You can say, but isn't one of the general rules? Isn't one of the general rules in Shabbos? Isn't one of the general rules in Shabbos that what? You'll say, I have intention. Right? I never had intention. Does that help me in this case? Nope. Why doesn't it help me? Because I have another general rule. General rule is if I do something 100% of the time, it makes a forbidden action. Not 95%, not 98%, 100% of the time. It makes a forbidden action, I can't do it. Oh, you tell me, but I didn't have intention to do that. So what? Or do I care what your intention was or not? It's irrelevant. Yeah, 100% of the time is going to be forbidden. Right? So honoring parents is very hard mitzvah. Very, very hard mitzvah. I think Rabbi Yochanan said on himself that his father died before he was born, his mother died in childbirth. So he said he didn't have that mitzvah to do. He wasn't able to honor his parents. So he said on himself it's probably a good thing because who says we're able to do it anyway the way it should be? The Gemara in Kedushin goes through a lot of examples how far honoring parents goes. One of the, I forget which rabbi it was, his mother spat at him and took his wallet, took his pouch or whatever, threw it in the river. Just threw it in the river. You think you got a bad? There, all your credit cards, gone. Right? Phone, gone. Right? Just takes whatever. She got angry for whatever reason. Or maybe she wasn't in the right mind 100%. Yeah? You gotta take it with a smile. That's just one example. And they all come to the same conclusion. It's a very hard mitzvah to do. To the fullest. It's a very, very hard mitzvah. Doesn't mean you don't have to try. Doesn't mean we don't have an obligation and it's hard. Right? Even according to the opinion that even if the person's evil, even if a parent is evil, not holding by Torah mitzvahs, yeah, so you can't contradict him directly. You still have to show a certain level of respect. Now, even if that's true, how far does it go? About honoring them? In other words, if they blaspheme against Torah, they're not holding by Torah mitzvahs, they walk in a room and they've done other things, let's say to give them this status, I don't have to stand up for them when they walk in a room. I don't have any obligation. Honoring them, you don't have an obligation. Being respectful, that's a different issue. Yeah. But someone's going to say, right? Parents can be abusive. Yeah. They can be physically abusive. They can be psychologically abusive. True. Right? That is very true. Now, you're going to say that's how far the Torah goes? That's how far it goes. So would it be better in such a case in this toxic relationship to have very little to do with them? Yes. Who says you got to be subjected to that? I'm not saying across the board, depends on the situation. But if it's very toxic, yeah. It's better to have either no relationship or a little relationship. Not the way it should be, but, the Mishnah in Sanhedrin says, Bishvili nivra olam, world's created for me. I got to live. I got to be sane. This is going to make me insane. It's going to cause me a lot of heartache. It's like saying I need another hole in my head. Some people think I do need another hole in my head. Maybe true. Yeah. We're not looking for problems. Sometimes the problems find us, we have to deal with it. So we have to find the best way, the best way to deal with it. So in such a case, right, let's go back. In such a case, what would I say? In such a case, if a parent would tell a child, to desecrate Shabbos, right? If they would tell them to just to desecrate Shabbos, right? You don't listen. There's no mitzvah to listen. Sorry, there's a mitzvah not to listen. No obligation not to listen. They can jump up and down, yell and scream and say, "You're my kid. You have to listen to me. It's one of the 10 Commandments." There's a mitzvah not to listen to them. Big mitzvah not to listen to. So how do we learn that out? Very good. Where do we learn it out from? Juxtaposition of verses. A juxtaposition of verses is a serious thing, right? The verses are not just thrown together haphazardly. The commentaries will explain, usually what the case is, right? What exactly the case is. Where, okay, I have these juxtaposition of verses. What does it mean? So think about it. If I got 50, 100 verses telling me, we're going to answer the questions now. Someone, you have, I don't know, you have a number of chapters speaking about the Mishkan, the tabernacle, the loops, the glass, the altars, the laven, the basin, the menorah, all these things, the beams. Can't forget the beams, right? You got the beams, everything you're building. Yeah. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, it says, by the way, before that, it says you got to keep Shabbos. Right? The Rashi, now there's learned the laws, whatever was done in the Mishkan does not supersede Shabbos. Now, someone asked the question, we'll finally get to the question, it took me half an hour, 20 minutes to get there. But the question is, what's so special about the Mishkan? Why does building the Mishkan not supersede Shabbos? Right? What's the answer? What's the simple answer? Think about what the Mishkan is. If you look at Exodus chapter 25, verse 8, chapter 25, verse 8 says that God wants a dwelling to dwell in this world, right? Make me a Mishkan so I can dwell amongst you. Now, that's kind of hard to do. How's God going to do that? God is omnipotent. God is everywhere. How is he going to put himself in a box? I don't care how big the Mishkan was. How is he going to put himself in a box? Good, that's for the Kabbalists to discuss. How God constricted himself, so to speak, came down to the spiritual world, and he ends up in the Mishkan. Very good. Yeah, we're not going to discuss it, but very good. However that works. Doesn't matter. However that works. God says he wants to dwell amongst the Jewish people. So what did they do in the Mishkan? Essentially, in the Mishkan, they brought sacrifice. God's presence was there. Moshe Rabbeinu spoke to God by the opening, right? By the tent of the Old Moed, or the tent of meeting. That's where he spoke to it, where God's presence was. So now, I'll take it one step further. By the sin of the golden calf, God says, if I dwell amongst the Jewish people, I'm going to slaughter everybody. Because the sin of the golden calf, someone's going to say, sin of the golden calf, who's it done by? The Arab. All the converts either came out of Egypt, came out of other places that they accepted as converts. They're the ones that made the golden calf, right? More than 3,000 people died, right? Most of the Arab, the mixed multitude. Okay, so wipe them out. God says, if I go amongst the Jewish people, I will slaughter all of them, collective punishment. So Moshe Rabbeinu intercedes. Sorry, God says, I'm going to make a nation from Moshe. He tells Moshe, I'll make a nation from you. I'll start from scratch. I'll wipe everyone else out. Moshe Rabbeinu says, no. Then you wipe me out also. So God says, fine, I won't dwell amongst the Jewish people. I'll be around, but I won't dwell really amongst them. And I'll take collective punishment. What's collective punishment here? In every generation, the Jewish people get punished collectively for the sin of the golden calf. Now, what's the obvious problem with that? right? What's the obvious question? You're going to say sons can pay for the price of the fathers, right? They can't pay the price for what the fathers do, right? For any number of generations. If that's true, why don't we pay the price? What do we do? I mean, we did plenty of things wrong. We weren't that generation. We didn't do that physically. We weren't there. But there's this idea of Kodesh Arabim Zelazeh. All the Jewish people are intertwined. If all the Jewish people are intertwined, so we pay the price even though we weren't there. Now, there is one caveat here. In general, the children should not pay for the sins of the father. When does that curse apply? When does that curse apply? That curse applies when the children go in the bad ways of the parents. If the children go in the bad ways of the parents, that curse will apply. If they go against the negative ways of the parents, the Gemara says they won't pay the price. Right? It's only if they're doing the same thing that the parents did. If they're going in their negative ways, that's the curse. That's what the Torah means. Now, somebody asks, okay, what's special about the Mishkan? Right? What's so special about the Mishkan? What's the answer? God's presence is it. The Mishkan became the Beis Hamikdash. It was the harbinger of the Beis Hamikdash, of the temple itself. The holiest place on earth, right, happens to be by the Western Wall. Now that Western Wall is over the outside, the outer wall of the temple. Now imagine, there are prophecies that even if it gets destroyed, temple gets destroyed, it won't be totally destroyed, it'll still be a remnant. Now, if you think throughout history, all the Crusades, all the terrible destruction that went on, during the first temple destruction, second temple destruction, what should have happened realistically? Realistically, the temple should have been flattened like a pancake. Nothing. You don't have a temple mount, you have nothing. Thing is flattened like a pancake. Mark Twain, Samuel Lang Owens Clemens, anyone doesn't know who Mark Twain is, that was his real name. Not a religious person in general. He came to the land of Israel in the late 1800s. Late 1800s he came. And he said exactly what the prophet said is exactly what he saw. The land of Israel desolate, destroyed. The Ramban, right, year 1100 or, somewhere around there. In Jerusalem itself, Nachmanides cannot find 10 Jewish males to pray with to form a minyan. And nobody here. Place was totally desolate, right? So we'll bring up one of the biggest lies. We're not going to get into politics here, hopefully. The Palestinian people, where were they? Where were all the Arabs? Where are all the nomads? Where's East Jerusalem? Nowhere. The place was flattened like a pancake. Oh, all you have to do, go online, Google it. Mark Twain, look what he said. Anyone's going to say Mark Twain's a liar? He's not a religious person. He never claimed to be a religious person. But he's telling you, Mark Twain, of all people. Mark Twain's coming to tell you, yeah, the prophets are right. I need Mark Twain, wrote Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn, right? I need him to come tell me all the prophets are true. What, I didn't know that? I had no idea the prophets are true. I need this writer, this American writer, to tell me. Very interesting. If he's not a religious person, what's the point of what he's saying? Think about it. What's he saying? He's saying what the prophets are saying actually happened. He was there. And guess what? He didn't find a Palestinian nation. He didn't even find any Jews here, barely. Place inhabitable. Inhabitable. Then you got all the other crusades and everything else. absolute miracle, no question about it. How do you have that wall still standing? How in the world do you have that wall still standing? Impossible. According to nature. And as we've said many times, the Jews are above nature, way above nature. Right? Doesn't make sense. I mentioned last night, we'll get into politics. I mentioned in Pirkei Avot, right? There was a, drive-by shooting, right? In Jerusalem, what's to stop that? All right, they killed the terrorists, 4 people died. What's to stop it in general? Nothing. No, they can't stop it. No possible way to stop it. They'll say, infiltrated all these Arab places, this, that, we won't let them in, but they got in. Unless God protects us. That wall should have been flattened like a pancake. Should be anything left of that wall. So the Mishkan itself, the tabernacle, became eventually the Beis HaMikdash. That became the temple itself later. First they had the Mishkan in Shiloh, right? And eventually they built the temple. Right? And the temple got destroyed, they rebuilt it, whatever. But they built the temple, that's what God's presence was, at least the first temple. Second temple, they didn't see God's presence as they did in the first. There's certain things lacking in the second temple, not the point. Yeah, but that's where God's presence was. And anyone who's ever gone there, everybody knows. You walk downtown Tel Aviv, you go to the Western Wall, you'll feel something different. There are stories, induction ceremonies of soldiers, of Israeli soldiers. Where do they have this whole ceremony? They have it by the Western Wall. There are stories of secular soldiers, can't make this up, secular soldiers, very little connection to Judaism at all. Go to the wall, they burst out in tears like little babies. What? Oh, big, muscular soldiers, this, that, basic training, they finished, blah, 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 all these great things. Okay, what are they crying for? I'm not saying all of them. Some of them maybe don't feel anything. Okay. Some of them do. You know what they're crying out? They have no idea why they're crying. I'll tell you why they're crying. Because their soul is screaming. Their soul feels the holiness and they're living in a body of who knows who and what they're doing. The soul itself is saying such a holy place, stupid! That's what the soul's saying, still you can't hear it though. Thank God. Imagine in your own head. I don't know, I guess person might be mentally challenged there or whatever. Not mentally healthy. But imagine the soul screaming out. That's what it is. Because they feel the holiness. Why do some people, the Arizal, famous Arizal, right? Who wrote a massive comment on Kabbalah, right, in Jewish mysticism. So he says on Rosh Hashanah, some people may actually cry on Rosh Hashanah. So he says, why do people cry in Rosh Hashanah? Why do some people cry in Rosh Hashanah? What's Rosh Hashanah about? Judgment. Judgment of the individuals. See, non-Jews don't know this. They also get judged on Rosh Hashanah. Mankind gets judged, right? See, we don't say you don't believe in us, you fry in hell forever. What do we say a number of times in the liturgy of Rosh Hashanah? This is creation of the world and the creation of man. We don't say creation of Jews. See, that'd be exclusive, right? Then they could claim, we're racist, right? It's creation of Jews. No, it's the creation of man, creation of the world, right? That's what we're saying. But if you look at the Rosh Hashanah prayer book, what's the Rosh Hashanah prayer book all about? Judgments. Now, if you read the whole prayer book and you don't see that, get back to me. That is what it's all about. Who by fire, who by water. It's going to be ripped up by animals. It's going to be poor. It's going to be rich. This, that. It's all about judgment. Divine judgment. Everyone goes through judgment. So if someone is able to actually shed a tear on Rosh Hashanah, so the Arizal says, why? Really? We're not supposed to cry in Rosh Hashanah. Right? It's, in general. We're not supposed to think about atonement. Atonement for Yom Kippur. Yeah. So says the Arizal, Rav Isaac Luria, of blessed memory, says the Arizal, you know what? Why is the person crying at that point? because their soul at that point is getting judged. They feel the judgment. Now, we don't know. We don't, our mind's not in heaven and we're seeing everything and, we're witnessing everything. But the Rizal says if a person feels the ability to cry in Rosh Hashanah, most likely at some point during the service, whatever is happening, that they feel that their soul is being judged. Pretty intense. So a soldier can go to the Western Wall. Now, some of them may not feel anything, maybe, right? Could be. That's how far gone some people are. But you have a secular soldier, and they'll burst out into tears. You're seeing an old relic, right? Like the Greeks, God forbid, right? They have old relics left. Nothing left of the Greeks. I mean, we live in a Greek world today, based on, a lot of things they brought to the world. But essentially, where's all the, what do you call it? All the architecture, all this and that. There's not very much in the world. There's some, not very much. Didn't survive, right? A lot of it. Now, they come to the Western Wall. That's where God's presence was. And it's still a whole difference of opinion. It still has the same level of holiness as it did when we came into the land or not. that there's a whole discussion. But certainly when the temple was destroyed, right, we don't see God's presence direct, not even in Israel. Right, it's Hester b'toch Hester panim. We live in a world of hiddenness. Even though you look at the state of Israel today, it's absolutely miraculous it exists. Now, do we see, can we say we see open miracles? Some people say, yeah, the 6-day war was like that. Other things like that. See miracles during this war as well, but not direct. We're not witnessing God, so to speak, as we would in the first temple, regardless whatever that means. Now, that being said, you go to the Western Wall. Now, some people would say, yeah, I went there. Maybe they got all psyched up. They didn't feel anything. Okay. Yeah. Can happen. It can happen. Guarantee if you go to other places in Israel, you'll feel there's a difference. Anyone who's ever gone to Tel Aviv, they come to Jerusalem, they feel the difference. Can't explain it. They feel the difference. The holier place. Jerusalem, the holiest place in the world. You got Hebron, also very holy. Shechem, where Joseph is buried, also a holy place, Jews can't go there. Very interesting. Places that the Jewish people bought legally. According to the Torah, like all inhabited by Arabs. Right? You got Hebron, they have like hundreds of thousands of Arabs and like, maybe, I don't know, 300-400 Jewish families. Why you need an army presence there. Shechem, you got no Jews there. You got absolutely no Jews there. Or Nablus, as it's called. No Jews there. How many times they burned down Joseph's tomb? People like to go there to pray. You need a police escort. And every time people go there to pray, there's always shooting. There's always something that happens. Right? I'm not so sure it's a big mitzvah to go there if you're putting yourself in danger. But okay. And Bethlehem, also I think was bought by Jews. Right? According to Tanakh. It is very interesting. All three, these two places. You got Hebron. So these three places. You got Hebron. You have Shechem. And you have Beit Lechem. Right, all bought by Jews. Right, according to Tanakh, and they're the biggest population, or some of the biggest populations of Arabs that are there. And only one of the places Jews live, because otherwise they wouldn't be able to survive. And in Hebron, the only reason the Jews are there is and they have a presence there because the army's there. The army wasn't there, be slaughtered. They totally be slaughtered. And don't think nothing happens there. Plenty of things happen there. Yeah, but they live there. Okay, I don't want to digress here. The point is, you can a person be as secular as they want, but their soul feels it. And some people, let's say. I'm not going to say by everybody, because not everyone feels it, right? Someone goes to the Western Wall, their soul can scream out, but in the person, just feels overcome by emotion, feels overcome by tears. They look like blubbering idiots. Why? It's a wall, right? Everyone will say it's a wall. What are you getting so emotional about? They don't have an explanation. They don't have a rational explanation. No rational explanation. I'm going to tell you what the explanation is that their soul feels something. Their soul is screaming out today, you dimwit. Why aren't you keeping Torah mitzvahs? This is the only place in the world. You don't get it? Right? They don't necessarily get the message, but it affects them. It affects them like no other place. So, the short, long answer is, why is the tabernacle related to Shabbos? What does Shabbos also represent? Olam Haba. Right? It represents the next world also. Right? So, Shabbos is holy because God made it holy. And the Western Wall wouldn't be holy if God's presence wasn't there. Right? Some say it would still be holy, even though the temple's been destroyed. Okay, it's a difference of opinion. But essentially, he made it holy because his presence was there. So therefore, I have a direct connection. Shabbos represents God's in control. Shabbos represents everything I do is done. Right? I don't have to worry. I don't have to worry about livelihood. Shabbos is Shabbos. If God can give you livelihood in 7 days, he can give you livelihood in 6 days. That one day, you don't lose out. All your preparations, all your money preparations for Shabbos, you don't lose. You get it back. You'll get the money back. Now, what do we see? What do we see? This is the holiest place in the world. That is what the Mishkan was. And that's what God's presence was there. Because God said, again, Exodus chapter 25, verse 8, I want to dwell amongst the Jewish people. Where did God dwell amongst the Jewish people? In the Mishkan, which later became what? The Beis HaMikdash, which later became the temple. Very good. So that's the power. That's the strength. That's the spiritual prominence here. So we see that Shabbos also represents the fact that what? God runs the world. And God's in charge. Friday night, there's the mitzvah when you make Kiddush. When you make Kiddush Friday night, you're saying Exodus chapter, Genesis chapter 2, right at the very beginning. I think God finished all the creating, right on during the week, and he created Shabbos. Very good. Why do we stand? What's the purpose? What's the purpose of standing? Friday night. Purpose of standing Friday night. Some people stand all of Kiddush. Some people only stand for that paragraph. Then they sit when they say the blessing over wine or grape juice. But why stand by that paragraph? What are you showing by standing? You are showing edus. What is edus? You are giving testimony. When a person gives testimony in rabbinical court, you do it by standing. You normally don't sit when you testify in a rabbinical court. Now, if the person's not well, they can't stand for long periods of time, whatever. Okay, they'll be allowed to sit. They're allowed to give testimony that way. Okay. But what's the right way to do it? Stand. That's how you give testimony, right? Learn it from different things. Not important right now. But the point is they do it while they're standing. Comes Friday night, you make Kiddush. Right? You say, the God finished creating. Very good, God finished creating. So you testify. You're testifying that what again? What are we reading over here? Think. What am I reading? I'm reading the second chapter at the beginning of the book of Genesis. What just happened in the first book of Genesis? Creation of the world. So basically you're saying God is the one in control of the world. He created the world. He made everything. He made animals. He made the stars, the moon. He made man. Right? He created everything in the world. Plants, creepy crawly things, all things. So So listen, you might be half asleep. You might not know what you're doing Friday night, whatever. You might be overtired, doesn't matter. You're standing in the back of your mind, or even in the front of your mind. You should be thinking, God's the one who created the world. That's what I'm testifying for. That's what I'm making kiddush on. Is the fact that he created the world. If God created the world and everything is his, then the holiest place in the world is what is by the temple, where it used to be. That is possibly an explanation, long-winded explanation. But that's possible explanation, connection to the Mishkan and Tabernacle and Shabbos. Someone asked, let me see the questions here 1 second. One second here. Yeah, someone here mentions, okay, person, had difficulty on Shabbos, right? Had difficulty on Shabbos, something happens. They say, but why should that happen? I don't have to keep Shabbos. I'm a non-Jew, right? So who says that has anything to do with Shabbos, right? A person got injured on Shabbos, let's say. Or they could have got worse injured, whatever it is. Does that have any connection whether they're obligated to keep Shabbos or not? Are you going to be one of these super Noahites going to keep Shabbos? I hope not. Right? You can't keep it like a Jew, for sure not. You got to do something on purpose to break it. So a person went out, let's say a person went to synagogue, we'll make it easy. Person drove to synagogue on Shabbos. Yeah, a non-Jew. Even 2 days before they convert. Okay. Yeah, they do anything wrong? They didn't do anything wrong. They're liable for death penalty? No. They're liable to be injured? No. So if they got in an accident, let's say, driving to synagogue, or something else happened, wherever they were going, does that reflect on the fact they should have kept Shabbos? No. It had nothing to do with Shabbos. Right? So now, someone will ask, but it was on Shabbos. Okay. It doesn't matter. Right? If you have no Jewish blood, we'll make it very easy. And there's no question you're a non-Jew. Shabbos doesn't apply to you in many ways. So even if a person got in an accident going to synagogue or wherever they were going, it's a coincidence. Might have been an interesting coincidence. It happened on Shabbos. Okay. But that's payback for whatever you might have done before. It just so happens God paid you back on Shabbos. But does that have anything to do with desecration of Shabbos? No. Should not have anything to do with desecration of Shabbos. Not at all. Doesn't matter where you went. Right? In other words, don't make the mistake and think, okay, I did this. I went somewhere. I got punished directly for what I did. Nobody knows. Nobody's a prophet. Nobody's a son of prophet. No guessing games here. Most likely, if a person got injured on Shabbos, that decree was made before the person did whatever they did. Doesn't matter where they were going that night or whatever they did that day. Because if that would be the case, and let's say we're able to pinpoint it and figure it out, yeah, usually punishment does not come direct. Probably almost 100% of the time, it's not direct. It may look like, oh, a person did this, they put themselves in a bad situation, God didn't protect them. Okay. Right? You see these pictures of people taking like these crazy pictures on top of mountains, they fall off and die. There was already a decree they were going to die. This is just how it happened. So they went against Kaufman's 614th commandment, don't be stupid. And the 615th commandment, don't be a moron. Who says you should be on top of a mountain, hanging off a cliff, taking a picture? That's kind of silly. It's kind of silly. Okay. Now, you'll tell me that's a direct cause. They fell off the cliff. Yeah, they fell off the cliff. Okay. Right? So what's going on? Let's analyze this for a second. What's going on? God says they have an obligation to die today. He sends out the angel of death. Okay, I want you to take care of them. Today's their day. They're going to meet me. Go take care of it. So he says, go take care of it. So he sends He sends Mr. S, the Satan, the evil inclination, the angel of death, whatever you want to call him. They send him out. God sends him out. Now, when God is taking them, the angel of death is taking them, are they liable for what they did at this point? He's only taking them in that way. That doesn't mean up until that point, what they did that day, they're liable. Who says? It could have been something they did, 6 months before, a year before, 2 years before, 5 years before. And then God says, okay, I'm going to take them out now. Why now? I'm not God. I have no idea. Put on my funny George Burns glasses, my funny mustache. I don't know. It's usually never direct. Because if something would happen, imagine, a person sits down to eat a steak, right? A steak, baked potato, it's high in cholesterol, high in fat, and this and that. And all of a sudden, bam, God changes into a salad and seaweed. You're going to say, oh, Tani Paralo. Bad things happen to good people. What's going on over here? We have free will. If we saw things direct, where a person gets punished for what they did in a very direct way, you would lose free will. We have to have free will. We're the only being in the world that has free will. Because when God breathed in the spirit of life into man, what did God do? Aramaic translation says that spirit of life is called the Ruach Memalelo in Aramaic. What does the Ruach Memalelo mean? A Ruach Memalelo means the ability to speak. Now, it doesn't just mean speak, because animals speak. We don't understand what they say. But animals speak. Animals are programmed DNA. They can choose to eat, not to eat, whatever, they're programmed. They have one aspect of the soul, the animalistic soul. That's it. We also have an animalistic soul. We have different aspects as well. So the ability to speak means the ability to reason, the ability to make decisions. Could someone decide today, a Jew, they're going to eat non-kosher? Yep. And they could eat it. And God doesn't change it. God allows them to make mistakes. Okay. Is that what God wants? No. Is it going to affect them in a negative way? Yeah. And if a person does it, they have free will. So let's say, they pick up, they eat lobster, they eat shrimp or whatever. Yeah. God going to turn it into a kosher burger? Not going to happen. I mean, if it happens, we'll speak privately. Yeah. Not going to happen. God gives you free will. He gives you an opportunity to make the right decision, to make the wrong decision. He gave you an evil inclination. He gave you the antidote. The antidote is Torah and his help to overcome it. But he gave you an antidote. If he didn't give you, at the end of the day, a person can do the right thing or do the wrong thing. No one's putting a gun to our heads to do anything. Person, a Jew wants to eat non-kosher. Why not? Who's going to stop it? Who's stopping them? Right? A non-Jew doesn't have that command. They don't have that obligation. Up until they go to the mikveh. They can go to Wendy's, go to Abby's. Right? Go to McDee's. Right? Go to McDonald's. What's the problem? Is there any problem for a non-Jew? No. Problem for a Jew? Now, does that Jew have a choice? Sure, he's got a choice. Anyone putting a gun to him and said you eat kosher, you're going to die? No. You got free choice. So in this case, you tell me it's a very interesting coincidence. Okay. Could very well be an interesting coincidence. So what? So what did happen on Shabbos? Again, is a non-Jew obligated in the laws of Shabbos the way a Jew is? No. Close? No. It's a coincidence that happened on Shabbos. Okay. Yeah. You don't have to feel bad about it. Right? Since the person hasn't converted, you're not obligated. But again, why would you feel bad? And if you ate, veal parmesan, you're going to feel bad? Why are you going to feel bad? Even if it's a JIT, even if the next day you're going to convert, why should you feel bad? Shouldn't feel guilty. You didn't do anything wrong. Right? And the rabbinical court will tell you, okay, we're going to convert you tomorrow. Let it rip. You want to go eat trade? You want to do this? Let it rip. You got one day. Enjoy. Because then you're going to convert and that's it. Right? Now, did the rabbinical court do anything wrong? I wouldn't necessarily tell people to do this per se. My rabbi hammered me on this. He said, they Jewish yet? I said, no. He said, they go to the mikveh yet? I said, no. He said, so they're not Jewish, right? I said, yeah. So they can do what they want. The day of the mikveh, they can go to Abi. Right? They can go to McDonald's. Not a problem. Not a problem. Now, someone's going to say, but I feel bad about it. Okay, so maybe we should speak privately. There's nothing to feel bad about. There's nothing to feel bad about at all. It's just interesting coincidence that it happened on Shabbos. Okay. Yeah. And let's say, we said before, a person's going to synagogue. Someone smashes them. Someone hits their car or whatever. They're they get shaken out. They're not physically hurt. They'll say, but I was going to do a mitzvah. Right? You don't have an obligation to keep Shabbos. It just so happens to happen on Shabbos. To feel guilty because of it? Now, I would say if you're going to a place you shouldn't have been, that's a different issue. Right? That maybe you want to feel guilty about, but it doesn't matter if it's on Shabbos or not. Even a person went to a place they're not supposed to be. Right? Even a place you're not supposed to be, you went on Shabbos. What's the worst part of it? It's not Shabbos aspect. The worst aspect of it is you went to a place you shouldn't have been. That's a different issue. But the fact that it happened on Shabbos, okay. Very interesting coincidence. Move on. That's what I would say. Move on. You don't have to feel guilty because Shabbos doesn't apply. Right? Shabbos doesn't apply to you in many ways. Someone asks, is bad but true review on the site? Someone chose to use allows review as form of lashon hara. That's a problem. That I've heard a number of people speak about it. That is a problem. Right? That is an issue. Because now there are a few things here. One is you want to warn other people. Right? You want to warn other people this product stinks. Or it's a ripoff or whatever. Now you say there's a benefit. There's a total benefit. Because you don't want people to get ripped off. True. Right? On the other hand, it doesn't take away from the fact it's lashon hara. Right? There are cases to be permitted. Right? There are definite cases where it be permitted. In a public forum like that, you got to be very careful. You got to be very, very careful. Because a lot of times, as hard as the person would try, it's going to be lashon hara. Most likely, it's going to be lashon hara. Someone asked, what makes us feel sad at a motel? When our soul is sad, temple's destroyed, sense of peace we don't feel there. Listen, there are a lot of reasons a person can feel sad. The world, in general, is a very depressing place. We have to try and sanctify it to the best of our ability. Even a day at a person's greatest joy, which is getting married. Oh, you're talking about going to Kotel, sorry. Why would a person feel sad? Right? So I'll tell you, even at the greatest time of a person's joy, when they get married, right? When they get married, before the groom goes to the canopy or whatever, goes to his wife to cover the veil, cover her face, so to speak, they put ashes on his head, saying that he shouldn't forget Jerusalem. Right? That he shouldn't forget Jerusalem. And during the ceremony, they break a glass. Same thing. Even though it's tremendous joy. Right? We're still in exile. Even here in Israel, we're still in exile. So now, The question is, why would a person feel sad? So at the end of the Gemara Makos, there's a discussion that they see a fox. Rabbis see a fox coming out of the Holy of Holies. Some of the rabbis cry, and Rabbi Akiva laughs. Why do the rabbis cry? This is the holiest place in the world. Holiest place got destroyed. A fox coming out. Rabbi Akiva laughs because he puts together two prophecies. And he says this prophecy is going to happen because of this prophecy, mentions the fox coming out or whatever. So I'll tell you the truth. The person goes to the Western Wall, comes part of like almost a tourist attraction in some ways, right? Everyone's going to go to see the wall, right? You come to Israel, that's part of what you see. Now, at the end of the day, how can a person feel sad? I think it's pretty easy in some ways, because as great as that wall is and what it represents, it's not whole. It's not complete. We don't have the Messiah. It is depressing, right? In many ways. Even though it's always a place in the world. I thought you were going to ask, how do people not feel anything there? Well, that's easy too. Because their soul is so spiritually cut off. They have no connection. They'll think, okay, this wall is similar, they've been to China. They go to the Great Wall of China. What's the difference? Right? What's the difference? That's a wall, this is a wall. If you have no, connotation over here and what it represents, you're right, they're both walls. They're both walls. Very good. Yeah. Person goes there, I'm not going to say everybody, because I know sometimes a person gets psyched out. They're expecting something, they don't feel anything. Right? But a person goes there. You think about what it represents. You think about what it is. How can you not be awe of such a place? You can ask for whatever you want. You're right, you're right in God's backyard, right there. A person does feel peace. You can feel sad, for what's happened. I was with my wife, downtown, Jerusalem, and downtown Jerusalem is like 10-minute walk to the Western Wall. Yeah. They see all these stores, restaurants, other things. You see people walking around. Wouldn't say the most religious of people, some more, some less. Right? Some more, some less. But at the end of the day, like my wife said, you see how people dress, you see how people act, you're right down the street from the Western Wall. So my wife made this comment many years ago and said, I can understand why the temple has been rebuilt. You see what people talk about, how people dress. Again, I don't think that's the only reason. It can also be very depressing, you think about it, but yeah, a person can feel a tremendous sense of peace. I don't think there's any question, but you could feel sad, right? You look up at the wall, depending where you are, and you see that dome. You see that dome built on top of it, right? That came thousands of years later, right? So, very interesting. Gee, what does the temple represent? What are they putting? What is the Dome of the Rock on? Oh, it must have been on a flattened surface. Idiots. So it must have been on a flattened surface. What do you think they put it on? They put it on the Western Wall, for goodness sakes, on the Temple Mount. There was something there before. Oh, thank you very much. The Western Wall was there before the Dome of the Rock. Yeah, you could look at that thing and say, wow, that's even more depressing. First of all, a Jew should not go up to Temple Mount, right? You should go up there as a non-Jew because, we hold, most rabbinic authorities hold that you don't know where you're going to step and, by the Holy of Holies, and you can't step there, you get spiritually cut off, right? There are minority opinions that say that if you know where to step and this and that, you go up there, but, vast majority of all the Orthodox rabbis hold not that way. But at the end of the day, think about it. Think about it. You got that. That's where, that's where Isaac was sacrificed. And now you got this big dome, this big gold dome. Is on that. That can be depressing to see. I think people are more in awe, than anything else. But yeah, there will be people there. They won't feel anything. Why don't they feel anything? I'll tell you. Because I think their soul is so spiritually cut off. Even if God's presence was there, they wouldn't feel it. Right? It's like someone from America came to the Brisker up. Rabbi Yisrael Zev Soloveitchik, a blessed memory, said, there's so many Jews in America that don't know anything about Judaism. If God would reveal himself, God would show himself and do open miracles, look how many Jews would come back. The Brisker Rav said no. Brisker Rav said no. Why? Because he said they have to be a vessel to listen, to be able to see. If they're a vessel to be able to see and to handle it, yeah, that would be true. Otherwise, like the Vilna Gaon once said, he said, I could say a certain ineffable name of God. I could bring all the stars, the constellations into this room. And still, you take someone like Aristotle or Socrates, any of these people, they're trying to figure out how you did it. How in the world did you do it? Must have been mirrors, must have been this. Right? So that's the Vilna Gaon. How do you know? How do you know they wouldn't believe straight away? Because he said they were alive in the time of Shmuel HaKaton. Right? The small Shmuel, they called him one of the greatest rabbis ever in the history of man. And they saw him and they had a connection. And they weren't misspiled. They didn't have, they weren't moved. They weren't moved by who he was. So if I brought all the constellations into this room, they're going to be moved by that. If a person's heart is hard as a rock, unless a nuclear bomb goes off, they ain't moving. They are not going to change. Right? You see by Bilam, I think I mentioned this last night also. You see by Bilam, the evil prophets, evil non-Jewish prophet. God came to him in a vision. He knew he was having prophecy. And he still wants to curse the Jewish people. Right? I've seen my video on my YouTube channel, Beyond Orthodox Conversion in Judaism, Parshas Balak, that having prophecy does not make you righteous. Does not make you righteous. God speaks to him, this, that, tells him you're not allowed to do this, and what does he do? He still wants to do it. Mind-boggling. Mind-boggling. How many people has God come to and that they know God is speaking to them directly or through a vision or whatever? Only a handful of people in the world since the beginning of time. You take this, this non-Jewish evil prophet, so to speak, wasn't a slouch by any means, but saw God himself in a vision or whatever. He's getting this message, he understands this prophecy, and he still wants to curse the Jewish people. It's mind-boggling. Right? The Gemara says also by Achab, that God wants them to repent. So God tells them, you, me, and Ben Yishai, son of Jesse, i.e. King David, we're going to stroll in Gan Eden. We're going to stroll in the Garden of Eden. You, me, and Ben Yishai. So what does he ask? So he asks, who goes first? Imagine. God comes to you. And he says, me, you, and Avram Avinu. Me, you, and David HaMelech are going to go stroll. We're going to take a walk. You're going to ask who goes first? You out of your cotton picking head? You're going to ask who goes first? He asks who goes first. So God says, Ben Yishai, he goes first. He takes the first step. Says, nope, not interested. Mind boggling. God comes to you and says, I'm going to stroll, me! I created the world! Not me. God created the world! And he's telling you, we're going to take a stroll in paradise. We're going to take a stroll in paradise. Right? Very good. We're going to take this stroll. Okay. Who goes first? What do you know goes first? What kind of question is that? That's ego. or ego, as we would say here in Israel, right? That's ego at the highest level. You want to know who goes first? Who goes first? You're going into paradise with King David himself? That's a little bit much. Yeah, that's how far it goes. That's how far it goes. A person can be so cut off. Their soul can be totally demolished, right, in many ways. And they don't feel anything. They're in the holiest place, they don't feel anything. Or they see miracles in front of their eyes, they try and figure it out mathematically how it could happen. Because they don't want to put God in the picture. So then someone asks, okay, I just answered that. What's the reason some people, even Jews, feel nothing special there in their soul? Yeah, for that reason. Why should they? They don't have any connection to Torah mitzvahs. If they don't have any connection to Torah mitzvahs, then what specialness are they going to feel in their soul? Nothing. Right? In other words, God's just giving them more, of this nothingness. And they just fill their souls with garbage. And the more garbage they fill their soul with, the harder it is for the soul to shine. Right? The harder it is for the soul to come out. Only because, it's only going to shine in a certain way if it does Torah mitzvahs. You're going to elevate the body and the soul. But if you go against what the soul stands for, you go, according to your base desires, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? Then you'll debase the body, you'll debase the soul. So now, so if a Jew, right, we'll make it easy. If a Jew, doesn't keep kosher, doesn't keep shabbos, keeps very few mitzvahs, right? Let's say, is it any wonder they don't feel their soul? Of course. Makes perfect sense. Why? Because eating non-kosher for a Jew, the Gemara says it dulls the spirits. It's much harder to hear about Torah and mitzvahs. That makes someone apathetic. So how are you going to change them? Let's say better. How are they themselves going to change? How are they going to want to keep Torah mitzvahs if they're filling their body with garbage, physically and spiritually? So imagine this is my promised land of Exodus, right? Borders on the Sea of the Reeds, Sea of the Philistines, right? It's much larger than the modern state of Israel, right? Talking about Egypt, talking about Syria. Lebanon, also certain parts. I don't know if it goes as far as to Iran or Iraq. But yeah, you're talking about a greater Israel. Eventually, Israel's going to be much bigger. Right, according to that. Right, no question. When and how it happens, it's anybody's guess. Yeah, let me see, there are other questions here. One second. What if someone is circumcised? Okay, let's see. What if someone circumcised chooses to do all the commandments without an Orthodox conversion? Okay. Now, someone does that, and they get circumcised, let's say for the sake of conversion. Let's say for the sake of conversion, we'll make it easy. Right? You get circumcised for that. Let's say that's the case. You keep all the mitzvahs. Now, even if that would be the case, what about going in front of a rabbinical court? Or at least, the very least, going in front of 3 kosher Jews. Doesn't everyone has their own bias. You can say, yeah, I'm keeping the Torah mitzvahs like I should. Okay, let's see. Let's see if that's true. Maybe that's not going to be true in many ways. Right? Maybe you don't keep the way you should. How are we going to know? How are the Jewish people going to know? So there is a question the Gemara asks. The Gemara asks, if a person says they converted, right? They converted. Is there a mitzvah to believe them? or do you have to look into their conversion? You're going to say, what, person's lying? Right? If let's say a little bit different. Person comes to synagogue. I think I mentioned this last week. One of my classes. Someone comes to synagogue, and they want to honor them by being called up to the Torah on a Monday or Thursday or Shabbos. They say you're a Kohen or a Levi, and he says I'm a Levi, right? I'm a Levite, yeah, or I'm a Kohen. Are they going to question that? They're not going to question it. Why? There's no reason to question it. They're going to say, "Come on, did your great great grandmother, was she a Reformed convert?" They're not going to ask that question. They're going to assume the person's Jewish. A person says I converted, and I'm a convert. Are they going to necessarily question it? No. If they hear somebody say something, as the English might say, it's a little bit dodgy, right? It's a little bit strange what they say, then they'll look into it. Then for sure they'll look into it. Why? Because they're saying things that aren't right according to Torah. Doesn't mean, they made a mistake on something that anyone could have made a mistake on. Okay, right? People make mistakes. But if if a person would say, yeah, I converted, yeah, my rabbi says I don't have to say Shema Yisrael, or I don't have to pray this or do that, that's cause for concern. Because you're uprooting something that everyone else does or should do. Uprooting mitzvahs. Oh, I don't have to keep this because of this. I don't know, everyone else keeps it. That would call something into question. But you're going to say, if a person said, yeah, I converted, it's one thing. But even if they did circumcision, let's say, I'll be generous here. Let's say it was done for the sake of conversion. You had a moil, you had someone who does ritual circumcision. They come and do circumcision, right? And, and that's it. Let's say they did it for the sake of conversion. How does that make them a Jew? Keeping all the mitzvahs makes you a Jew when you go in front of a rabbinical court. That's an obligation. Or at the very least, and I don't recommend anyone do this, is that you go in front of 3 kosher Jews. They don't necessarily have to be rabbis. 3 kosher Jews that keep Shabbos. Now, what's the problem? Even if we have 3 kosher Jews that keep Shabbos, does not mean that conversion will be invalid. The problem is these 3 kosher Jews may not know very much about what a convert needs to know. Maybe they're not well versed in the laws of Shabbos. Maybe they give some sort of test. I don't know. Question is what level of their knowledge. So, in some cases, that conversion will be okay. That conversion could be okay. Yeah, and let's say it's a woman, so she doesn't have to do this. Let's say she says, I keep all the commandments. Okay. She goes in front of 3 kosher Jews. They ask, a whole bunch of questions. They know all the answers. She goes to the mikveh, she converts, very good. Now, is everybody going to accept it? This is what we want. We want something's going to be accepted just about everywhere. Right? So you're going to say, but the 3 kosher Jews. I had someone tell me this in China. They were in China. Couldn't move to a Jewish community. They said, I can find 3 kosher Jews and convert. I said, that's very good. But most people probably won't hold of it. It depends on the case. They're like, but that's what Maimonides holds. That's the Rambam. I said, you're right. That is exactly what the Rambam holds. But it depends on the case. You can't just say, well, I go in front of 3 Jews and that's okay. That makes it all right. There's criteria. These 3 Jews have to know something. If it's ascertained, they asked the right questions. They knew what they were doing. Should be kosher. Now, I'll tell you, in this process, anyone who's out there who wants to convert, I will tell you that you go to a place that's going to be respected. You try and go to a place that everyone's going to accept. Now, there aren't going to be questions. There could be questions down the line, but hopefully not. Do I have to worry? Down the line? Not necessarily. Right? If a person goes to a Mickey Mouse base, then yeah, that could be a problem. That could be that could be a serious problem. It depends. It depends. It depends. If you go to 3 people, even if they keep Shabbos, even if they're kosher Jews, who says they know what they're doing here? If they know what they're doing, again, you have to see each individual case. If they know what they're doing, probably not a problem. Probably not a problem, right? Probably have to go to another basin, so no one's going to question it. But let's say for argument's sake, they knew what they were doing. Person dunked, they went to the mikvah. Okay, let's say it's a good conversion. Is that the best way to do things? No. Is that going to call into question a lot of things? Yes. You don't need more problems. Now, so I'm going to say if I go to a rabbinical court, I go to a basin, is that a guarantee? No, it's not a guarantee. But we do the best of our ability to make sure there will be no questions in the future. I'll give an example. I dealt with somebody here. They converted in a certain rabbinical court in the States, right, in a certain basin. And their kids were already in school. The whole family converted, right? So there was an issue. What happened? One of the rabbis of that rabbinical court was, let's just say they were thrown out for different things that they did. Yeah. Now, what's the problem? When they converted, they went in front of 3 rabbis. They went in front of a rabbinical court. Not a problem. One of them technically got fired. So now really the rabbinical courts only have 2. So generally we say if you have a rabbinical court of 2 and they judge, the judgment is good, but it's called a beis din chutz. It's called a chutzpahdik beis din. You need 3 because you have to go according to the majority. You go according to the majority, comes to money matters and other things. Now the problem is you only have 2. Right? You only have 2. So I helped them along, took the rabbinical court here, right? A few months afterwards, they all, they ended up all converting, but it was complicated. Now, they went to a proper rabbinical court. I'll tell this story, then I'll mention something else. So there was husband and his wife. I think 3 kids. I think they had 3 kids at the time. And this guy's wife's in-laws, right? His in-laws. So the mother-in-law asks a whole bunch of questions. Is that she goes to mikvah? Very good. She does. Now, her husband. So they had a moil there. Check him out. No problem. He goes to dunk. Very good. So now they take this guy's wife, right? She goes to dunk. Her kids go to dunk. The moil comes in to check him. Now, the moil comes in and checks and says, we got a problem. That's not what you want to hear. You do not want to, for the guy, you certainly don't want to hear that, but okay, right, we'll keep this clean. Yeah, you don't want to hear there's a problem. So I asked the moil. I said in Hebrew, yesh safek b'zeh? I said, is this a doubt? And he's like, lo, zevah. He said, it's for sure a problem. Right? He said there's no doubt here. So what happened? He said that there's a someone who's a bigger expert. They're going to bring this guy in, this rabbi in, to check him. But he wasn't in town, so they had to do it next week or whatever, or a week later, week and a half later. The beis din at this point, they all look at me. They're all screaming at me. Now, what's the problem here? The problem is I never would have thought this. If they went through a proper beis din, they probably had a proper moil that's going to do the circumcision. The assumption is I don't have to check. I don't have to ask them to check. Assume it's done right. Why do I have to assume? Tell me they got a reform person to do it something. Okay, then I would say you got to check. But in this case, when they started my class, I never would have thought to check. Never. They started screaming at me. They're like, we got a whole problem here. So now they went through this conversion. Right, they go through this conversion. So this is what we call gerus l'chumra. It's a stringent conversion because one of the rabbis got thrown off the rabbinical course. Probably still okay, but anyway, they go through the stringent conversion. Now this person technically not married to his wife. Yeah, now they got a problem with all the dishes in the house. There are a number of issues here. They had ways out of it. They had ways how to how to get out of the problem. But they started yelling at me. And I said, if I would have known there would have been an issue, yeah, of course I would have checked them first. I had no idea. Why would I have thought there would have been an issue? Could be. I should have thought maybe should have checked them before, maybe. Whatever. So this person had to get checked out by an expert. He gets checked out by the expert. He says, yeah, it's a problem. It's a problem. Right? So whatever. There was still a piece there, whatever it was. Right? There was still a piece there. They had to do it. They had to take it off. Now, it's kind of a painful procedure here. Yeah. So, I don't know, 3, 4 rabbis there. They're like, you want to come in? I was like, no, I'll just watch the door. I want to make sure no one gets in. No one tries to get in. I said, I'll watch the door. This guy was laid up for like 2 weeks. For 2 weeks. But that wasn't the biggest problem. The biggest problem is it caused other issues. Right? So now, why do I mention that story? Get a lot of mileage out of the story. But why do I mention the story? Because in general, person went to a proper rabbinical court, and this is, let's say, a proper rabbinical court. Should we assume from a proper rabbinical court something could happen? Why should we assume? If it's a rabbinical court not on the up and up, and there are rabbinical courts like that, unfortunately, then yeah, I can understand. You have problems later. You'll potentially have problems later. If it's a proper rabbinical court, I haven't had a problem in 15 years with this. Anyone who went to converted, wherever, whatever, New York, Lakewood, California, there's never been an issue. Now, is it 100% foolproof? It'll never happen? Can't say never, right? Never say never. But if it's done in a proper place, then all things being equal, we shouldn't have issues down the line. If it's done right in a proper place. I'm not saying nothing can ever happen. It's Murphy's Law. Something potentially could happen. Now, something like this, where a rabbi gets thrown off the rabbinical court, for improprieties, let's say. Is that something that's common? No. Is that something, wow, I have to worry about this, no. I mean, that's part of my job. Make sure someone doesn't go to a Mickey Mouse, rabbinical court, right? Then for sure you'll have problems. Then for sure you'll have issues. But I'm saying if it's a respected rabbinical court, again, I'm not saying something couldn't happen. I mean, it's a rabbinical court now somewhere in the States. For like the first 10, 15 years, people looked at the conversions being okay. And then, the rabbi there started doing some things that, again, English would say is a little bit dodgy, right? A little bit dicey. And then the son took over, made it worse. So now you say retroactively all those conversions are bad. People don't respect these conversions today, right? For the most part. But what about someone who did it when things were good? Would someone want to clarify their status if such a thing happened? Yes. Most likely. Do they have to? Not necessarily, but again, it's like puts a cloud over them, right? So to speak. So, again, a person wants to go to a place. Again, that's part of what I do. Is to make sure they're not going to have issues. Again, is it 100% guaranteed? Nothing 100% except for death and taxes, right? Not necessarily in that order. That's the guarantee. Everything else not 100% guaranteed, but in 15 years I haven't had an issue. And this thing is also, a respected rabbinical court. What are the odds? The rabbi is going to get thrown off or whatever for impropriety. It can happen. Would I put all the money I don't have down, say it's going to happen? No, not at all. Yeah. So the short, long answer is, even if someone got circumcised, right? Or if it's a woman, and she keeps all her mitzvahs, and she says, I'm a Jew because I keep everything, it's not good enough. You have to go in front of a rabbinical court. Or at least in front of 3 kosher Jews, which I don't recommend. Right? That's what's brought down. Not good enough. Not good enough. How to deal with nosebleed on Shabbos? Oh, good question. Person has a nosebleed on Shabbos. So better, if possible, you take a rag that's not, or tissues that are not white. Because if they're white, you got blood, that's red, normally. Normally it's red, what's going to happen? It's going to color the tissue. You're going to say, it's not my intention to color the tissue. You're right, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's going to color it. It's a form of coloring that's forbidden. Now you're going to say, but that's all I had. I had tissues right in front of me or whatever. That's all I had. Okay. Right? At best, maybe you say at best, maybe it's a rabbinic prohibition, but even in this case, you know, you got confused, you know what to do. So that's what you did. Okay. Are they going to throw the book at you? No. It's better 100% to use, you know, if you had tissues that were, you know, colored. So when the blood goes on the tissue, you're not going to have an issue because you can't color something that's already colored, right? If it's white, you know, you got an issue. So now let's say the only thing you have is, like, and I wouldn't recommend it, you got a white towel. You got nothing else. Okay, right? You're going to ruin the towel probably. But, you know, if you have a towel, something, you know, tissues that are colored, you will not have this issue. You will not have this issue. And even if you can't find colored tissue, you know, your nose is gushing blood. The only thing you have are napkins. Napkins are not colored. Okay, so use a napkin. You don't have any other choice. So if you don't have any other choice, okay, so that's up to you. That's what you would do. Let me see any other questions here. Can non-Jews pray from the siddur? Yeah, if you're in the process of conversion. Right? If you're not in the process of conversion, non-Jews should not use the Jewish prayer book. And the reason is there are some things in the Jewish prayer book that are universal. I would say that are universal. Many things are in the plural because we look at ourselves as one unit. Because the Jewish people are looked at as one unit, right? Those things apply to Jews, not to non-Jews. Now, there are some things within their prayer book that are universal. If you're going to tell me, I'm only going to pray those things that really only apply to me, you know, it's one thing. You know, there is no wide prayer book out there, right? I haven't seen it. I mean, I've heard about it. So that's probably a very good guide. But a Jewish prayer book, unless you're a JIT, unless you're a Jew in training, then you can use it. If you're a non-Jew, you have no interest in conversion, do not use a Jewish prayer book, right? Do not use a Jewish prayer book. Someone here mentioned, okay, someone says, the person wants Torah mitzvahs, like as King Solomon says, like diamonds and rubies, right? It brings up in Proverbs. Shouldn't you give up those things like McDonald's, movies, and all that before completion of conversion? Yes. 100% they should be given up, right? At some point, you know, before conversion. But if somebody wanted to on the day of conversion or before, they say, okay, I want to let it rip before I convert, they're allowed to. There's nothing wrong with it, even. You're going to say, but it'll tempt you in the future. It's the one last thing. I wouldn't personally tell people to do it. I wouldn't tell people to do it. I had someone once tell me, you know, they said, oh, don't tempt me. Don't tempt me with that. The evil inclination at its best. Right? I wouldn't tell someone to do that person. You know, I agree. At some point, a person, you know, should be keeping kosher. You know, not watching movies and, you know, and all that. At some point. But is there anything wrong up until the point of conversion of not doing that? For a non-Jew, the answer is no. I would say maybe, you know, watching movies that's, you know, there's immorality and other things going on, probably not a good thing, right? Maybe I'd say it's a moral imperative, maybe, right? Forbidden for a non-Jew? No, wouldn't be forbidden. For a Jew, they'd be forbidden, right? But so I think, you know, the problem is if you tempt it too many times, it's harder to give up. I've had people tell me this. They have a real struggle with food. Food is a big thing. Now, there are plenty of things out in the market. You got bagel bits that are, probably all chemicals and probably kill you in the process. You got, fake shrimp, fake crab, these other things. You're not missing very much. Listen, M&M's became kosher. Oreos became kosher. What are you missing? What are you missing? Nothing. Right? Some people say, no, it's not the original. It's not it. It is something to give up. It's true. But you're right. If you want it so bad, at a certain point, you're going to stop. At a certain point, you're going to stop. You would ask me personally. I would say, if you're already at a point you haven't been doing it for so long, I wouldn't do it. But what if the person said, I just want to have my one last thing. My one last thing. I want to have shrimp scampi. I don't know. I want to have double lobsters. I want to have, whatever. Veal parmesan. I want to have it as the last thing before I convert. Is that forbidden? No. Is it going to cause them anything in the future? No, they know they're not going to do it ever again. Right? Would I recommend it? Now, my Rebbe would hammer me on this. He said, of course you should recommend it. It's not forbidden for them. But I wouldn't tell someone to do it. I wouldn't necessarily tell someone to do it. I know there are rabbinical courts that do. A lot of them will say, okay, you're going to convert in 2 days. Live it up for the next 2 days, and and then that's it. Right? Now, do they expect what people to do? It's permitted. There's nothing wrong with it. Doesn't affect them in a negative way that does it. So they want to, they want to go to Hobbies, they want to go to Wendy's or whatever. They could. Last fling. Last thing. Enjoy. Personally, would I tell someone to do it? No. But if someone would come to me and say, I want to have my last thing, okay. There's nothing wrong with it. I can hear my Rebbe screaming in my ears, but they haven't gone to mikveh yet. They're not Jewish yet. You're right. He's right. Right? But so, at a certain point, I would tell people not to do it. To get used to keeping kosher. That's what I would say. But if they want to do it the day before they convert, not an issue. Let me say 1 second. So it says unkosher food, especially unclean meats, are like cigarettes. Again, let's make one thing clear. Unkosher meat for a non-Jew does not affect them. The Kli Yakar says, Leviticus Chapter 11, Kli Yakar says that non-Jews eat all kinds of things. Doesn't affect them in a negative way, like it does a Jew. So therefore, a non-Jew is never going to do it if it doesn't benefit them. So eating non-kosher meat does not have a negative effect. Doesn't have a negative effect. At some point, you got to stop. I would agree. At some point, you got to stop. But don't make the mistake and think it affects a non-Jew like a Jew. It doesn't. Right? We hold it doesn't. It doesn't have that same. Does not have that same effect. Right? That's the case. I got to say they're like cigarettes. It depends. It depends. There are people really into food. I get it. There are people very much into food. Food can be idolatry, 100%. 100%. It's a sacrifice. But what I'm pointing out is there are so many things that were originally not kosher that are kosher today, or somewhat like kosher. You're not missing anything. Right? You're not really missing anything at all. Let me see. Other questions? Oh, someone asked, am I okay? Yeah, I don't know. I've had this cough for 2 weeks. Can't shake it. A lot of people have it. I don't know, there's something going around. And then I caught a cold. So kind of made things a little bit worse. So whatever, taking things forward and trying to get rid of it. But I don't know, I've been fighting this cough for 2 weeks. I didn't have a cold 2 weeks ago. I didn't have a cold last week either. So I don't know. It's a very strange thing. I haven't gone to the doctor yet. I mean, I don't think my lungs are filled up or anything, but if I start feeling worse, probably, but it's something's going around. A lot of people have it. So yeah, trying to get rid of it. Drugs are good. Make it feel a little bit better. Someone here mentions God our Father says, Exodus 22, verse 20, Jews should not vex strangers. Oh, yeah, very true. Yeah, is it a long conversion process form of vexing strangers? So let me say like this. Right, we're not supposed to. Let me see 1 second. Let's see the actual quote. Yeah, shall not taunt or oppress a stranger because you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Yeah, Exodus chapter 22, verse 20. What does taunting strangers mean? What does the verse mean? The verse means that you do not remind the convert of what they've done in the past. Right? You don't remind a secular Jew and say, I remember you used to eat shrimp, or I remember you used to do this, or I remember you used to do that. It's a Torah prohibition. Torah prohibition, reminding someone of their past. Now, what if someone willingly tells of their past? There's a question. The question the Chofetz Chaim asks, can you speak Lashon Hara about yourself? Shouldn't it be forbidden to say negative things about yourself? You used to eat shrimp, you used to do this, you used to do that. He says you can be over Torah prohibition of speaking Lashon Hara about yourself. But what if you're doing it, let's say, one of the reasons speaking Lashon Hara would be okay in some ways, one of the conditions is there has to be a benefit. Now, what's the benefit of telling someone you grew up like them? Because they don't think you're a fruitcake. It's like, oh, you would never understand what I'm going through. Right? You didn't really grow up in my world. Right? You grew up in a totally different world. So a person could either tell them not true. Right? I actually grew up in your world. I know what goes on in that world. I did this, that, and the other thing. Right? There is a benefit to that because then they see you can relate to them on a different level than they thought. Right? So if there's a benefit, it'd be permissible. Right? In general, though, should you speak badly against yourself? No. In general, no. Now, that verse has a specific meaning. The verse means you don't remind them of their past. You don't taunt them about what it means that you also. Here's talking about a non-Jew, right? A convert, sorry. Talking about a convert. You don't remind them of their past because you're also strangers. Same thing. A Baal Tshuva, someone who returns to Judaism as a Jew, didn't grow up as an Orthodox Jew, you do not remind them of what they did in the past. Torah prohibition. That's what the verse means. Now, someone's going to ask, and they do ask, isn't the process being too long a form of taunting potential converts? Now, there are some places, I will say that the average amount of time to convert is between 3 and 5 years. That's a long time. Average process takes 2 years. Right? Even if you live within walking distance of an Orthodox synagogue, could be less. But usually the average give or take is about 2 years. Now, is 2 years too long? Some people say it's too long. So I'll ask you like this. In the 2 years that a person learns, a lot of Torah mitzvahs, you should understand what to do. Blessings, kashrus, 13 principles of faith, shabbos, all these things a person has to get down and know. You're going to say, I can do it in less than 6 months. I don't think so. Because there's a lot to learn. Now, the Gemara says, after a person converts, why do they have so many problems? A lot of times, they can have an evil inclination, works against them, even the process of conversion. Some of my best students once, the start of my classes, a week into my class, this fridge broke. 2 weeks later, it's on the washing machine. About 2.5 weeks after that, car breaks down. I get this frantic phone call. Says, "This always happened by students of yours?" I said, "Yeah, but you just happened a little bit earlier." Yeah, I was going to say, but the evil inclination is working against you right now. I can't imagine what the evil inclination is going to be later. How much stronger it's going to be later. The Gemara says sometimes a convert will be severely punished after conversion. Why are they going to be severely punished? Look at all they worked for. Look at how hard they worked. What's the problem? Why are they severely punished? because they didn't learn what they needed to learn properly. And now they're making serious mistakes, and now they get punished because they didn't do what they're supposed to. Right? There are people out there that want everything to be done very quick. Doesn't work that way. You're not going to get you can read all the books you want. You read all the books you want. I can give you the book on the laws of kashrus. I can give you the book I used on the laws of blessing. The laws of Shabbos, even though it hasn't been translated. I think, no, I don't think it's been translated. Whatever. I can say, okay, here are all the books. I'll be back in 3 months, 4 months. Go through all the books. Write down all your questions. Yeah. So book smart, a person needs. You need to read, you need to learn, 100%. But imagine if I gave everybody, a few books to read about learning how to swim. I gave you a few books learning how to swim. Yeah, you go through the books, you go through them a second time, a third time, very good. I said, okay, we're going to take a class field trip. Right? We're going to go, here's the swimming pool. Boom. I throw everybody in the deep end. What's going to happen? They didn't know how to swim. Right? I'm talking about a case they didn't know how to swim. They only learned swimming from a book. If you learn swimming from a book, you know what's going to happen? Bloop, 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 bloop. You're going to drown. Because you don't know what you're doing. You never saw it in action. You never saw it on YouTube. I don't know. You missed it. Right? You missed those videos on YouTube. You didn't see it. Right? So book knowledge can only take you so far. Can only take you so far. You can hear things about how a hot plate works and this and that. If you don't see it in action, you get something out of it. I'm not going to say not. Right? You need someone to take you through it. It doesn't have to take, technically, really, can a person get all that knowledge, in a shorter amount of time? In theory, that could be true. The problem is there's a lot of information, ton of information. And a person, if they don't review, and I don't give tests, maybe I should, right? But if a person doesn't review what's going to happen, you won't know. You'll make mistakes. Better make the mistakes now. I hear this all the time. It takes too long. Okay. I heard someone said, it takes too long. I'm going to be a conservative Jew. I'm going to go to the conservative movement. It's a lot easier. It is true. It is a lot easier. Yeah. So I said, okay, what should we take out? What do you think we should take out? I'm open to suggestions. Kashrus, Shabbos, a lot of laws in Shabbos, a lot of laws in blessing. Pick something that we should take out that we shouldn't do for. There's a reason most people do not finish the process. Less than 20%. It's a grind. It's the way it should be. We're not proselytizing to bring converts in. But if they're going to come, they have to learn. And if they have to learn, there's a lot to know. There's a lot to know. So I would say that does it have to take 4 years? No. Now, there are technical issues. I've heard people say, I never knew I could convert. I've been trying to do this for 15 years. Or 10 years, right? That's how when anyone saw my, the video I made, I had somebody 10 years. 10 years is in the process of conversion. Finished the conversion 2 years by me. Now, there were technical issues why they couldn't convert. I wasn't a miracle maker, right? But there were technical issues. Well, the person needed the knowledge. They for sure needed the knowledge, but there were technical issues, right? So that's not taunting them. A person can't come in and say, imagine a person wants to be a Christian, right? Very easy to be a Christian, right? You take on JC, sprinkle a little bit of water on you, and that's it, right? Very good. Muslim, maybe a few more things, to take on, okay. At the end of the day, the system is what it is. I'm not saying it's foolproof, by any stretch. But, in medical school, 30% of first-year medical students are weeded out by the end of the year. I think second year is like another 10, 15%. By the third year, I think they stick. Whoever's going to be there sticks, right? Is going to end up being a doctor. So you're going to say you should make medical school easier. So let's say they made They made medical school a whole lot easier. Yeah. They dropped a lot of their requirements. Would you go to a doctor like that? Whereas now you don't have to learn this. No, you don't have to learn that. No, you don't have to learn the other thing. It's like going to a witch doctor. That's what it's like. I mean, not exactly. Right? Yeah, you're playing with fire. You say, oh no, take this, do that, do that. They don't have the requisite knowledge. So you say, but how much does the person really have to know? There's a lot to know. They're not expecting you to master every last thing, but they want you to have working knowledge. You have to have working knowledge how shabbos works. What you're allowed to do, not allowed to do, how to reheat things. I mean, these things come up every Shabbos. They come up every week. You have to get it done. Could a person do it in a year? Technically, maybe. I've never seen it, unless under certain circumstances. Right? But, it could happen, in theory. All right, so throw to press strangers. Yeah, what's the Hebrew? What does the Hebrew say over there? Right? The Hebrew is verse 22. One second. Sorry, verse 20. The ger lo soine lo telachsenu ki ger meisem beretz Yisrael. It says a stranger. Right? That's what it says. Who's the ger? Who's the ger? We're not talking about necessarily a ger tosha. Someone who lives in the land and keeps the Noahide laws. I'm not talking about that. Talking about a convert. Right? That's what you're talking about. You're talking about manservants. All right. Also, do not mistreat strangers who strange in the land of Egypt. Right. Right. One second. It's verse 20, 22, verse 20. Someone asked, Jewish couple adopt a non-Jewish child. What's the process then to become Jewish? So if it's a benefit for the child to convert, then you're allowed to convert them as a child. Right? It's got to be a benefit for them. If the parents are going in the right path and they're keeping Torah mitzvahs, it'll be a benefit. So if it's a benefit, then they would convert them as a child. Right? They would definitely convert them as a child. That shouldn't be a problem. Right? Again, if they're going to a Jewish school, parents are keeping Torah mitzvahs, there's no reason why they can't convert. In general. Some of that Judaism like the trophy wife, Jason Islam would be settling. It's not a question of settling, they're just false. Just totally false. You're settling. Well, yeah, I guess you can look at it that way. You're settling for something that's, doesn't have any validity, any way, shape, or form. That's true. That is true. Someone asked it's unhealthy. Someone asked by eating non-kosher meat, whatever, it's unhealthy. Why is it unhealthy? The Kli Yakar says it doesn't affect you in a negative way. Right? If it doesn't affect you in a negative way, it shouldn't be an issue. Right? For non-Jews. Any other questions? Or general questions? As usual, I think I'm very far today. Even a few of my coughing fits here. So, I'm going to stop here. Take some more medicine, have some more tea. I just every Sunday, 9 o'clock Eastern time, 4 o'clock Israel time. Anyone has any questions, find me on Facebook at Michael Chaim Kaufman, Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism, orthodoxconversion.com. And Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism, all on YouTube. There I got videos on the Torah portion of the week, the Book of Leviticus, Q&As, Ethics of Our Fathers. Anyone wants to send me an email, rabbichaimkoffman@gmail.com, RBBICHAIMCOFFMAN @gmail.com, which I'm in a good